everyone. We know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. It's time for our show, ILTV's Weekly Review, where we'll give you the scoop on everything you need to know about the last 7 days right here from Tel Aviv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here to keep you informed. Israelis are in shock following a deadly chemical weapons attack in northern Syria, and now Prime Minister Netanyahu is speaking out against the violence.
When I saw the images of babies suffocating from a chemical attack in Syria, I was shocked and outraged. There's no excuse whatsoever for the deliberate attack on civilians and on children, especially with cruel and outlawed chemical weapons. I call on the international community to fulfill its obligation from 2013 to fully and finally remove these horrible weapons from Syria.
At least 72 people are estimated to be dead after the Syrian government struck an opposition-held town in the north of the country. 20 of the victims are children and another 17 are women. Videos from the scene show volunteer medics using fire hoses to wash chemicals from the victims' bodies alongside images of lifeless children piled in heaps. Hundreds are still suffering respiratory issues, including vomiting, fainting, and foaming at the mouth. The international community is blaming the Syrian government for the attack, which is reminiscent of the 2013 chemical assault, which left hundreds more dead in Syria.
Here we are more than 70 countries and organizations. The world is looking at us, the Syrians are looking at us, and are expecting us to give a strong push to the political talks in Geneva under the excellent leadership of the UN and the Special Envoy, because it's clear that the best investment for all the people of Syria and for a sustainable future in the region is commitment to peace, serious, consistent commitment to peace.
Nobody is winning this war. Everybody is losing. It puts a danger to us all. And the fight against terrorism is vital, but any successes will be ephemeral without a political solution to the crisis in Syria.
Objectively, I simply don't see how Bashar al-Assad can remain in charge after what he has already done. Of the 400,000 people who are estimated to have been killed in Syria, he is responsible for the vast majority of that butcher's bill. And you have to go a long way back in history to find a tyrant who has stayed in office in such circumstances.
Israelis just over the border are reeling, and President Rivlin is comparing the incident to atrocities from the Holocaust. Israeli government leaders are now making calls to take greater action to stop the horror, saying that the Jewish people have a moral obligation to open their gates to victims of genocide.
Israel is today expressing condolences to the Russian people in the aftermath of yesterday's devastating terror attack that shook St. Petersburg to the core. The homemade bomb filled with shrapnel detonated in a moving subway car, killing 11 people and wounding roughly 50. A more powerful bomb was then discovered and defused at a nearby train station. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement soon after the attack, expressing condolences on behalf of himself and the Israeli people to Russian President Vladimir Putin and to the families of those who were murdered or wounded. He added that, quote, "The citizens of Israel stand alongside the Russian people at this difficult time," end quote. In what's become a sort of traditional display, the Tel Aviv City Hall lit up with the colors of the Russian flag, and in a further sign of solidarity following the attack. An attack the kind of which Israelis are all too familiar with.
I think that the gesture of the Tel Aviv municipality, it's a really beautiful thing, because here in Israel we know that kind of problems, and it happens once in a while here. And I feel sorry for Russia that this terrible thing happened, and we feel sorry for them.
I think it's a very nice gesture that Tel Aviv City did for the Russian people. We experience this kind of terror attacks quite often, and we know what it feels right now for the Russian people. So We hope the Russian people will be strong and come back to the life routine very fast.
There's been no immediate claim of responsibility for the St. Petersburg explosion, but investigators believe it was perpetrated by a Kyrgyzstan-born suicide bomber in his 20s with links to radical Islamist groups banned in Russia. The blast comes after the Islamic State terror group called for attacks on Russia in retribution for its military intervention in Syria.
One Israeli soldier was killed today and another was lightly wounded in what is currently being investigated as yet another deadly car ramming attack. Both victims are Israeli men in their 20s who were standing near a bus stop when a silver Audi crashed onto the sidewalk and slammed into them. One of the men, Sergeant El-Chai Tahar Lev, died at the scene.
We got a call about a terror attack in the section of Afra. We got to the scene. After 2 minutes, we started to treat the injuries, and unfortunately, we had to pronounce the person one is dead, and the other one was taken to the hospital to treatment.
The incident occurred at a junction near the Ofra settlement, which is just northeast of Ramallah in the central West Bank. The Israeli army has apprehended the Palestinian driver of the car. Arab media sources are identifying the suspect as 21-year-old Malek Ahmad Musa Hamed from a nearby town. The Hamas terror group immediately boasted that anyone who thought the recent spate of Arab violence against Jews has been waning was wrong. This past Saturday, another West Bank Palestinian was killed during a stabbing attack that wounded 3 Israelis in Jerusalem. Israeli security forces are on heightened alert to counter a possible spike in terrorism over the upcoming Jewish celebration of the Passover holiday, which begins next Monday. The knife-wielding terrorist who stabbed 3 Israelis on Saturday is being praised as a martyr by Palestinians on social media today. The teenage assailant was shot and killed by police in Jerusalem's Old City before he managed to kill anyone. 17-year-old Ahmad Jazal came to the Israeli capital from the West Bank village of Sebastian near Nablus. He took a smiling selfie of himself outside of the Dome of the Rock Mosque shortly before taking out his knife and stabbing 2 Jewish civilians, one of which is 18 and the other 20. The assailant then wounded a policeman who rushed to the scene but stopped the rampage by shooting the terrorist. All of the Israeli victims were taken to the hospital suffering light to moderate wounds. At least 162 Palestinians who have launched stabbing, shooting, or car ramming attacks against Israelis have been killed by security forces since September of 2015. Fortunately, alert security guards in Hebron stopped what could have been another tragedy before it happened on Friday evening. A Palestinian was arrested when he was found concealing a knife near the Tomb of the Patriarchs. In other weekend violence, another Palestinian teenager was shot by Israeli troops while allegedly being caught throwing rocks at Israeli cars near Ramallah. The 15-year-old received medical treatment at the scene before being taken to hospital and placed under arrest. An Israeli border police officer was lightly wounded in a rock-throwing incident nearby earlier that same day. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning Israel's enemies to reconsider any future attacks against the nation because the David Sling state-of-the-art missile interceptor has just become fully operational. The intermediate range system was jointly developed with the United States and it completes Israel's formidable defense shield.
אבל עם כל החשיבות שאני מייחס ליכולת ההגנה שלנו, אני חוזר ומבהיר, המבקש להכותנו יוכה, המאיים על קיומנו ישים עצמו בסכנת קיום.
David Sling is capable of destroying rockets fired from as far away as 125 miles. The system was designed to counter the threat posed by Hezbollah just over Israel's northern border. The Iranian-backed Lebanese terror group last fought a war with Israel in 2006, but it also may be used in a looming potential conflict with Hamas to the south. Tensions are rising with the terror group amid intel that the Gaza rulers have acquired much larger warheads. The radical Islamists are also accusing Israel Israel of having killed one of their commanders in recent days. David Sling joins the already operational short-range Iron Dome and the long-range Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 missiles. The arrows were developed with the Iranian missile threat in mind, but Arrow 2 was used just last month to destroy an anti-aircraft missile fired from Syria after Israeli aircraft carried out strikes against weapon shipments to Hezbollah.
It seems like the whole world is obsessed with Israeli settlements. But what do Israelis feel themselves? On one hand, the Jewish population in the West Bank has gone up by almost 2/3 in a decade. But on the other hand, those same numbers also reflect a drop in the overall migration rate by 1/3, leading some to speculate the enterprise may be starting to lose some of its ideological appeal. One 26-year-old kindergarten teacher's assistant recently moved to central Israeli city after living on a settlement for 5 years. Although her new home is much smaller, she has greater access to community services and says the location wasn't just for logistical reasons.
Towards the end of our stay, I started to feel uncomfortable living in a settlement because I personally don't think that building more and more settlements is going to help bring peace. In fact, I think that it will make things worse. And so I felt uncomfortable living in one at that point. And so I was able to kind of breathe a sigh of relief once I moved here.
As Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and United States President Trump continue to negotiate building limitations on the land Palestinians seek for their future state, the settlements are drawing relatively fewer people every year. Studies show that back in 2006, there were 20.1 newcomers for every 1,000 residents. In 2015, that number fell to just 6.1.
מפעל ההתנחלות נמצא בתהליכי דעיכה, מה שאומר שההיתכנות הפיזית והמרחבית של פתרון שתי המדינות שריר וקיים. הדבר קשור להחלטה פוליטית ולא להיתכנות פיזית מרחבית.
There are now about 400,000 settlers, and this statistic shows a drop in the growth rate from about 10% in 1995 to 4% in 2015. Settler leaders acknowledge that decline, but reject any fall in popularity. They insist the downturn is due to government curbs on construction, which means there simply aren't enough homes for all the people who want to move out to these areas.
הרוח של ההתיישבות והחלוציות ולחזור לארץ ישראל ולחזור אל המקומות שבהם עם ישראל היה כל הזמן, הולך וגדל כל הזמן. יש עשרות זוגות צעירים שמאוד מאוד רוצים לחזור לגור ביישובים שלנו, לא מצליחים בגלל שיש הקפאת בנייה. הרוח הולכת ומתעצמת.
One former resident of the Ofra settlement also blames the decline on the lack of available homes.
There are very few houses available in Ofra, and naturally the prices have gone up as a result. So it's less attractive for younger couples. It was once much more attractive. That's a simple rule of economics. I think that if they were to build 50 new houses in Ofra, they would fill up as quickly as they would be, advertised.
Now, there's actually been a rise in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish sector. Religious communities in Beitar Ilit and Modi'in Ilit expanded from 10 to 30% of the total settlement population over the past 20 years. But many of these generally low-income, large families say they only live across the 1967 lines because it's less expensive and that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not on their minds.
המגזר לא מחפש ללכת לגור באידיאולוגיה במקומות, המגזר מחפש מקומות זולים ומקומות שיהיה להם את החיי קהילה שלהם כמו שהם רוצים, אנחנו לא מחפשים חיכוכים.
The issue of Israeli building in the West Bank consumes so much of the world's attention, most people are completely shocked to find out that settlements take up less than 2% of all the land in the disputed territory. Speaking of settlements, many would like to know what's going on with the first new one in 25 years that was approved by the Israeli government just a few days ago. Well, no one's going to move in tomorrow or even this year. In fact, it's likely the new town won't be habitable until sometime around 2020. That's because there are a lot of bureaucratic and logistical procedures that have to be carried out first. The defense minister has to appoint a preparatory committee to do groundwork, like determining an exact location. It also has to work out all the aspects relating to the budget, environment, and infrastructure. Then, a zoning committee has to green-light the plan, and so does the finance ministry. The findings would then be given to the defense minister to take back to the security cabinet for even more deliberation. All of that means that it's likely to be at least a year or two before any bulldozers actually start to roll. Settler leaders say they fear the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may intentionally draw out the process so as not to anger United States President Donald Trump, who asked Israel to hold back on building. So far, Washington seems to accept Netanyahu's position, however, that he'd already promised the new settlement before that call from the White House. The new homes are to be built for former residents of the illegal Amona outpost, which was destroyed in February under court order.
Now get this, we have some new insight into the Israeli-American teenager who's suspected of perpetrating the widespread fake bomb campaign against Jewish facilities abroad. His mother is now speaking to the press. In her first televised interview, she apologized for her son's alleged actions. She says he should be helped, though, and not prosecuted. The family lives in the Israeli city of Ashkelon and is now afraid the 19-year-old may be extradited to stand trial in the United States. He is believed to have carried out as many as 1,000 threatening phone calls over the past 2 years to at least 4 different countries. The teenager is being called M, and his mother's only been identified as C. C says her son's unable to control his actions because he's been diagnosed with autism and also has a brain tumor. He doesn't have many friends and was homeschooled since the family came to Israel from the U.S. when he was 6. His mother says that even though M was a late developer, he's highly intelligent and very good at creating complex games. C is shocked over what happened and says that none of this makes sense because her son loves Judaism and even expressed concern over the bomb scares. For now, the teen remains in police custody, although his father, who works in the high-tech sector, has been released.
Commentators on the Israeli political scene are buzzing today following the declared comeback of one of the Israeli premier's greatest challengers. Former government minister Gideon Saar belongs to the same party as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Saar resigned from the Knesset in 2014 to spend more time with his family, but he's remained popular in the polls during his absence. While speaking at a Likud party office, Saar dramatically claimed he's coming back for the sake of the people of Israel and the state of Israel. He also says he's doing it to make sure Likud remains in power. The re-emergence of Netanyahu's most serious rival comes amid internal party conflicts and 2 police investigations which raise uncertainty over the premier's political future. The next national elections are slated for 2019, but Likud primaries are to be held next year. A Channel 2 opinion poll determined that Saar was the most popular Likud party member to potentially replace Netanyahu should the PM resign over the ongoing corruption probes against him. In the same poll, Saar was also found to have been equally as popular as Jewish Home Leader Naftali Bennett. Both Bennett and Saar, however, trailed by 7 points behind Yesh Atid's chairman, Yair Lapid. It's widely been suspected, by the way, that one of the reasons the Prime Minister recently sparked a coalition crisis over the national broadcasting station is because of Saar's wife, Geula Evan. Evan had just been named as the anchor of the flagship program at the new network, and an agreement was ultimately worked out to keep the news division at the old station, though, meaning for better or worse, it seems Geula Evan is now out of what could have been a great job.
Turning back to the same issue, Israel has a front seat view of the tragedies unfolding in Syria, which lies only a few miles over the northern frontier. And even though the 2 nations have fought 3 wars over 7 decades of hostilities, the Israeli people are doing everything in their power to help alleviate the suffering among their northern neighbors. Since 2013, the Jewish state has given medical care to more than 5,000 injured Syrians who make their way to Israeli army field hospitals. Israeli nonprofits are setting up schools for refugee children in Greece, and Jerusalem's even working on a program to take in orphans. Now, following the toxic chemical attack, the Israeli group called Just Beyond Our Border is calling on Jerusalem to help create a safe zone in parts of the war-torn Arab Republic. The grassroots organization's already raised more than $500,000 for children seeking refuge in southern Syria. Over 8,000 Israelis have donated money to the group's crowdfunding campaign since it was launched this past October. The money's been used to purchase clothing, food, and medicine delivered with aid from Israeli aircraft. One of the organization's leaders says he now wants the Israeli government to lend political support for the establishment of a safe zone where greater numbers of people can be sheltered from the civil war. At least 500,000 Syrians have reportedly been killed since a conflict erupted in 2011. The Just Beyond Our Border group may hold another protest in front of the Russian embassy in Tel Aviv against Moscow's support of the Damascus military regime. Last December, hundreds of Israelis formed a human chain outside of the compound, calling for an end to the bloodshed. And last but not least, the groups also organized 14 different gatherings nationwide where Israelis offer their communal prayers for the people of Syria. Speaking of another issue that we need to tackle, water is one of the most precious resources on Earth, but unfortunately we're severely lacking it. But imagine if you could just turn the air that you breathe into a tasty drink. That may sound outlandish, and it's going to be hard to believe this, but it's true. One Israeli high-tech company has almost miraculously come up with a way to extract drinking water from thin air. WaterGen technology created a device capable of producing 15 to 20 liters of drinkable water each day. ILTV viewers know Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz from our Ask Alan show. Professor Dershowitz actually unveiled the amazing technology on stage in front of thousands of delegates at the recent APAC conference in Washington. He described the innovation as one of the greatest weapons against worldwide water shortages. He's also saying that the most effective way to end boycotts against the Jewish state is the development of technologies that the world can't live without. About 1/5 of the world's population, that's 1.2 billion people, are estimated to live in drought-ridden areas. About 75 million people in India lack access to clean water, and New Delhi's already signed a deal with the Israelis to produce its purified water in rural villages. And Vietnam's made an agreement for the firm to generate tens of thousands of liters of water every day for the people of Hanoi. The Israeli tech can be used anywhere that there's a shortage or even contamination caused by natural disasters, like after the hurricanes in Haiti and New Orleans. All right, the lead star of the popular HBO TV series and film Entourage is on the screen this week for a totally different venture. Adrian Grenier is starring in an Israeli commercial, and it's hilarious. Most people know the 40-year-old entertainer as the character Vincent Chase from Entourage, not as the face of the Israeli gift card company Buy Me. But even though he is not Jewish, he still clipped on a yarmulke head covering to act in their latest commercial. He even nailed the ch sound in the Hebrew word for Passover, which is Pesach. Just listen.
Hello, everyone. Happy Pesach. I'm Adrian Grenier, the most charming actor I know. So charming that I've been able to give away crappy gifts.
Wow.
And still get a...
So thoughtful.
I know. Sometimes I think this smile can get away with anything. Enjoy this toilet golf, Nana. Happy birthday, Grandpa. A souvenir from the gas station. A towel swan. It's a sweater mouse pad. A ring if you're king mug. A rock replica. It's an ashtray. It's an edible yo-yo.
That's incredible.
You see? But you, my friend, are no Adrian Grenier. You're not even close. So, for this Pesach, simply go to Buy Me, COIL, and give your friends and family a gift they actually love.
For those of you who don't know, Passover is a time for giving gifts to those you love. Grenier came all the way to Israel to shoot the commercial and even took the time out from filming to visit the Western Wall in Jerusalem and post a photo on Instagram. He's not the first foreign actor to star in an Israeli Buy Me commercial. Last year, his Entourage co-star Jeremy Piven did a similar ad campaign, and let's just say he nailed it.
How did you know? Look at this. It's a fish-shaped bowl. I was just thinking I needed a fish-shaped something to put all my stuff in. It was like you read my mind. Come here. You nailed it. Give me a hug. I love you. I was acting. What is this bullshit? It's so useless that I can't even re-gift it because I don't hate anyone enough to give it to. I would rather be scraped with a rusty menorah.
The Jewish holiday of Passover has a deep history and a rich cultural tradition, but perhaps no tradition is more well known than that of eating gefilte fish. I don't remember the first time I tasted this household dish, but you can bet I started eating it pretty early in life. Well, this year, the first Passover Seder just over the horizon, one Israeli textile and art design company called Noma took the opportunity to share this video showing the magical moments that some lucky babies got to join the gefilte fish tasting club. Check it out.
That's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next Friday for our next episode of ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv.